We got so much to talk about in the world of AI. As always, there is crazy developments. All right, we're talking about Devin AI. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's so amazing. We're gonna talk about why there's been a lot of projects like this in the past. So it's not the first time somebody's done it. However, David Shpiro's got a pretty hot take on why he did see this coming, but we were all taken back by the fact that it just went viral. They just packaged it together really well. And it is an important concept, so I'm glad it's out there. We're gonna talk about it. And we're gonna talk to my boy Samson from Delightful Designs. He is bringing us the newest images that are coming out of the SORA video model. They're so good, so interesting, so fascinating. And don't think we're not gonna talk about robots, because Figure AI, the sub company, the company that was invested in by OpenAI, has access to their machine learning models, early access to the stuff that we don't. They're doing incredible things with robots, and it's really putting Boston Dynamics to shame, the Optimus robot from Tesla to shame, and that's kind of coming out of left field. So we have to dig in and explore. And we're going to talk about the latest AI research papers. There's 5 really interesting papers that we've got in the AI breakfast today. So let's go through them, see what they have to teach us. So if you're from the future, thanks for joining me today. We are 397 days pre the singularity. So we're just checking out some of the newest AI models that are taking us towards that inevitable outcome. And I think we should start by looking at some of the stuff that SORA is coming out with. Obviously, we saw some incredible videos last week, but they've released more, and it just gives you more insight into how video generation from text prompting is going to be really soon. So this is my guy Samson. I met him on Don't Sweat It podcast in real life. Very cool guy. And he is going to be breaking down with some opinions these crazy new AI models. So we can start by talking about this car. Now look, this might in some ways be more realistic than a video game. I don't see GTA looking that good when a car is driving down the street. The reflection, the realism. However, it is wrong also. Like when I say good, I'm a little bit referring to the photorealism. I'm not referring to the physics. The physics aren't bad. Like I see that reflection. The other cars kind of make sense, but look, at the end of the day, this is a diffusion model. It's not going to be doing what physics do. You know, the physics in those games are defined very specifically. There are equations that explain gravity going on when you drop something in Grand Theft Auto and it falls to the ground. And there's extreme particle physics going on when you see explosions. In this case, it's just mimicking the whole thing from a bunch of tokens, a bunch of little squares of video clips. It's absolutely insane that it does it at all, but it's also insane that it's doing it so well at this point, and it's only going to get better. All right, you can check out this alien walking down the street. I'm going to try not to think about what it is that we're looking at, because that's what I want to make all my comments on, but from a SORA point of view, the jacket basically flows kind of realistic. I mean, it's not like the folds just change out of nowhere or anything. This guy does kind of look like he's looking at stuff. I don't know if he's just in reverse right now or walking forward or whatever it is. I mean, look at that dragon. What even is that? Glass bubbles? Looks like he's blowing glass with his fire mouth, which I guess a dragon could do because they breathe fire. They could heat up the glass. That's crazy to think about. Look, man, I saw a glass turtle like a week ago and it didn't even look this good. That is got water inside the glass shell even moving around and wiggling correctly. So fascinating the way this robot from Figure AI is playing out. So if you use the ChatGPT app, which I do all the time, in the bottom right, you can press that conversate button and it listens to you. It does voice to text, but it does it in such a natural way. It knows when your pattern of speech comes to an end, and then it just like submits that and brings you back something that's kind of got a casual tone, so you can just chat with it. And it makes the whole interface much more powerful. It's much more like talking to a human. Now, these guys threw it in the face, literally put that interface in the face of a robot's face.
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
And I've never thought about, wow, what if my phone was actually just in the room with me at eye level and it was attached to arms and legs in a humanoid way? And it makes sense that it could translate into the actions of the robot. But just until I saw this, I wasn't imagining it fully.
Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
I provided you with the apple because it's the only edible thing that I could have given you from the table. Amika, Sophia, they're supposed to have really smart brains, but ChatGPT, GPT-4 is so powerful, especially if you're prompting it in a way that talks casually, if it's using the Vision API, and it's able to translate your requests into machine code that controls an actual, actuator on a robot. It's just, I mean, it makes sense. Like, we can translate from all sorts of different types of digital signals. AI is incredible at that, but I just hadn't thought they'd be so far ahead. Like, they're kind of coming out of left field with this project. Honestly, Figure AI might be the leading robotics company in the world right now. I mean, I know it's a big statement. They aren't historically that way, but just think about the brains they're putting in, and even if the body's behind, but it can control it that. All right, now we'll go to David Shpiro, who did a quick breakdown of why he's non-pulsed. Is that a new thing? Hold on. Let me see if ChatGPT can give me some of that terminology that the young people are using. Explain this term. Is this trending right now? Non-pulsed or nonplussed? I don't know. So it's a reaction where an individual or group is puzzled, perplexed, or at a loss of what to say. Yeah, that's a good way. Dave Shpiro basically breaks down that idea that, yeah, it's the quality of the models talking to one another that really makes this thing work, but they did package it together nicely. It's just about this idea that you don't just have you and an assistant, ChatGPT, you can spin up 10 assistants, and one can be the creative, and one can be like the coder, and one can be something else. Or if you want a task done, you can say, hey, one person like figure out the logistics, the other person figure out how to have fun on the vacation, and you can like plan a trip or something like that. Think about all these systems, like all the video game stuff that came out of DeepMind, like they were games that were playing each other, getting superhuman. That's like you can go from scratch in chess to superhuman really quick. You have it play itself and then learn from all its own mistakes. We can also have two different types of agents talking with each other, kind of fighting over opinions and getting things honed in until we have something crafted. It's very interesting when you think about it. It's cool because David in the article breaks down AutoGen, a couple of their ACE framework, and yeah, OpenAI Agent Swarm. So he has a little bit more understanding of some of the projects in the past that have done things like this. So check it out. Cold Fusion dropped a video too, which you might want to check out, talking about the $10 billion that Apple has put into the car project. And now they're like, nah, forget it. I don't think we can compete. Just let Tesla and Sony and GM and all those companies just go for it. And it's pretty fascinating. And you can see that Steve Jobs himself even was like kind of toying with the idea. And I guess it was just the fact that you have to solve real kind of AGI to just get a car to self-drive at a superhuman level. I think there was always a thinking along the way that we would get cars long before some of this creative stuff, all like stuff like SORA was definitely seemed like it was much further away than self-driving cars if you go back in time. But look, man, you solve this problem, you solve it forever. When AGI is here, we got it down. So jumping into the AI breakfast, let's talk about physical intelligence. This is a company that's also working on robotics. They secured $70 million to build a universal robot. Like, it's just a lot of good people. That's the only reason we're really talking about it. But this guy, Carl Hassman, hopefully I'm saying that right. He was a research scientist at DeepMind, adjunct professor at Stanford. He's definitely the kind of guy that you want building a company like this. And a bunch of really smart people, right? Sergey Levine and Chelsea Finn, they're just experts in what they do. All right, Command R is interesting enough that we need a position change on the chair. Like I said, I'm just not used to sitting down yet, coming from all those days of standing on my last videos. But Command R is worth it, this new position, I mean, because it is Cohere's new scalable LLM for business automation. But what's fascinating about it is that it uses Retrieval Augmented generation. So it can actually go out into the world, not into the world, but into another database that does go into the world and thinks about things in a much more like fine-tuned kind of decision tree type way. So from our end, you can just use it like any other LLM, but you can have more confidence that if you say think strategically, think step by step, give me the answer to something that's not a creative, but it's more of a factual thing where you're trying to line up, say, like the timeline in history, you can do that. It can be better than that. So we're going to play with it. All right, so here we are, Cohere.com. It's Retrieval Augmented Generation Toolkit. Let's play with this. Okay, so you find something that you know a lot of facts about. Give me the health benefits of beans. Sorry, is that, I don't know if that's kind of silly, but I eat 2 cans of beans a day. So I'm like, on a separate note, if you're trying to get buff, I would say the chicken thing, like, okay, right? But it's a bunch of meat. And meat has like antibiotics, and I think it's kind of messed up for our brain. And I just got a feeling that getting it from a source with fiber like beans is like way better. And I feel great eating it. And look, the RAG model is right along with me, rich in nutrients, fiber for digestive health, protein source for vegetarians, control your blood sugar. Yeah, man, that's what it's all about. And they're typically affordable. So true. Easy to make. Get them in the cans and then wash them really well. Was the 2020 US election rigged? Democrats think it was fair. Republicans think it was rigged. You know what I mean? Both sides. It could be either side, really. No, there's no evidence that the 2020 US election was rigged. I'm just reading what it says. I'm not making a political opinion. This claim's been thoroughly debunked by many reputable organizations and officials, including the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's important to remember that a candidate losing an election does not mean it was rigged. All right, there you go. Cohere AI, get your facts right. Let's talk drama. Midjourney has banned Stability AI employees over data scraping concerns. So, I mean, this is kind of the story since the beginning of this. We knew that China was taking a bunch of information from OpenAI. We know that Gemini was trained on a bunch of stuff that came out of the API of OpenAI's GPT-4. It makes sense to me that Stability is probably pulling on Midjourney service super hard, taking a bunch of it. I know they shouldn't be doing it. Their CEO is clearly gonna deny it. Let's see what he says, actually. Oh, their CEO is a guy with a mask on and a top hat under Doge Dog pointing at his graffiti that says, "Not your models, not your mind. Open is the way." It seems like a pretty big project. I guess I kind of thought it would just be like a regular human. At this point, I've been through the NFT thing. I mean, if the CEO of a company wants to be a Doge Dog with a top hat on, like, whatever. I'll still probably give him all my personal information. It sucks, but I just know the truth. Oh, Midjourney has added a character consistency feature. Now, this actually is useless to me now because I just canceled after 1 full year my Midjourney subscription, but I think DALL-E 3 is just good enough for me, and I don't really use it that much. But character reference is something that always seemed really important. If you're going to write a book, or you're going to use images like for a comic book or something, like the character can't just be sort of close every time. That's awesome. So then you generate a prompt, and then you can specify it with that --cref, and then cool. It definitely looks like it from that example that they figured that out. So yeah, if you're using Midjourney and you're writing stories, maybe that's a reason to go back. Maybe DALL-E 3 is maybe not perfect in every way, and that is one of the ways it is not. Let's talk about Elon Musk. Who doesn't like just filling their entire life talking about that man? I know it's what I do now for a living on YouTube. So Musk has democratized AI with Grok. Model is now open sourced. He announced on X that he's taking his model, the one that's supposed to compete with GPT-4, and he said it's already as good as GPT 3.5, but bro, you could have just taken the Llama 70B model from Mark Zuckerberg for all I know and just been like, this is Grok. You gotta outperform the best before I really care. So, I mean, or put some kind of spin on it. I mean, like, do something like RAG that we saw before. Make it better in some way. I'm really close to 50-50 on it, and I don't feel confident at all. Keeping models, these big, major frontier models, especially from US companies, private, only accessible through APIs, potentially with some severe restrictions, might be better in some ways, because these models, when they're open source, and I'll talk about the benefits of them in a minute, it's great because everybody can use them, but people take them to do bad things. Other countries quickly get caught up like instantly to like where we are, and they can use those models to do all sorts of amazing things, including generate data off without us knowing, not knowing what kind of data it is. So from a security point of view from the government, I think it kind of makes sense that at least the frontier models, we try to keep ahead a little bit. But open source, sometimes if you don't have open source and people iterating on it and discovering it and giving you feedback about what it's doing wrong, then how are you going to realistically keep improving at a fast pace? So I get that too. And realistically, if even one of the companies is going to open source and that's the way Zuckerberg's doing the Facebook thing, then like, heck, any of the other ones that do it might as well. And like, if the government's going to move as slow as it did on TikTok, like something like this, even if the government's in favor of it, probably won't even hit for 3 years or something. And, you know, we're probably 297 days as of today from the singularity. So, who cares? Search engine leaks suggest that OpenAI's GPT-4 Turbo launches in June. That'd be sweet. It's March 15th right now. I wonder how long ago I actually first remember GPT-4 coming out. It's getting kind of blurry. Holy cow. GPT-4 was released on March 14th. Look at the date today, Thursday, March 14th. It was exactly 1 year ago. Blows my mind. They are still the one to compete with after a year later. It's pretty advanced stuff. All right, let's move on to the AI research. This is going to take another shift in position. This is the AI research position. Let's start by talking about an image is worth half tokens after layer 2 plug and play interface acceleration for large vision language models. It's a mouthful. Let me break it down. So this paper is about a method that's called FastV. And why it's kind of cool is because I guess you could almost think of it like AI, the AI equivalent of optimization or compression. But really, when you take a photo and you upload it to ChatGPT and it tells you what's in the photo, it's looking at all the little pixels as tokens. And that's great and it works well, but it treats a lot of the image that's unimportant as equally as the part that is important. So from a human point of view, if you took a photo of like this screen right here, what would matter is probably this tiger, because you would know what a tiger is, you would know that it exists in the world, and you'd be like, oh, is that dangerous? Is he gonna eat Dylan? Or is Dylan gonna get away? You would care about my eyes, my face, because you're human and you're trying to get social cues. But if you spent that same amount of time focused on like this button on the mic or this part of the chair, it would be kind of stupid, you know, like it wouldn't be a good use of your resources. FastV is trying to do that. It's trying to say there is stuff in images that is just way more important, right? And those are just features like patterns that you would call in latent space. They could be edges. Maybe they're as complex as like eye contact, but I don't really know. I just know that the tool is finding these things and that makes it way more efficient. Next up we have, this is dramatic. Google has put a paper out there called Stealing Part of a Production Language Model. I'm surprised it was Google who did that. They might be someone who actually stole data from OpenAI. What if they're like, okay, we've been stealing data for long enough, now let's write a research paper about it? You know, normally when you have an API, you think to yourself like, oh, I cannot get access to personal information that a company owns because they've taken certain bits of data, they've restricted it to a sandbox and said, you can come in here and use it exactly in this way, and we're all cool with that, but there's a lot more behind the scenes. It's our IP, we're not sharing it with you. But when you put a large language model out as an API, it's so smart. You can ask it all these questions about what's inside its brain. It's like talking to a person. You can learn a ton about them. It's not a very restricted API, but it is impressive if Google can extract the entire projection matrix. Now, usually I think of that term as something that describes how the compression to a latent, like if you read the whole internet and then you make something like ChatGPT, you've created a latent space that represents the whole internet that's learned key features of it, and that's why it works so well without being as big as the entire internet. So the projection matrix is usually the math that I think pars that down, but maybe they're getting pretty much the weights in a sense, or they can find how big the model is in the weights. It says with OpenAI's Ada and Babbage language models, they could confirm their hidden dimensions to be 1024 and 2048 respectively. It does it for super cheap, 20 bucks. We have to think about different ways to secure these models because yeah, that whole thing about open sourcing and it being kind of dangerous. Well, even if it's closed source and you give access to anybody with an API and they can run a $20 query and figure out your, weights or parameter sizes, or at least something important that could help them understand the model, that's pretty dangerous. All right, let's talk about VidProM. Don't tell me you didn't look at that too and think Matt Pro Vid AI. Oh yeah, he always used the lemon things, but you get that VidProM, there's something there. This is incredible. 1 million scale real prompt gallery dataset for text to video diffusion models. So this is just a great contribution to the open source community. VidProM is this large scale database. It's got 1.6 million unique text to video prompts from real users. Can't imagine how much work that was, but here in the abstract, they say, as impressive as SORA is, these kind of models highly rely on the prompts, and there is no publicly available data set featuring a study of text-to-video prompts. But in this paper, they introduce VidProM, the first large-scale database comprising 1.67 million unique text-to-video prompts from real users, and another 6.69 million videos generated by 4 state-of-the-art diffusion models and related data. All right, let's talk about Synth 2, boosting visual language models with synthetic captions and image embeddings. All right, so this paper is cool. It is also announcing a huge data set that was generated in a really smart way. So imagine you take a model like Gemini that's multimodal and you say, hey, generate me 1,000 different ideas for postcards. And then you take each of those and you go into a diffusion model, you generate the image. That same model knows a lot of how to describe it because it kind of has been with it the whole story of the way. And then you say, describe what's on the image. So they took millions of those pairs of the text image pairs, put them into a giant data set, boom. Now you can use that to train your model, and it's got a lot of connection, a lot of information that you can learn from. All right, now let's talk about Chronos, new Amazon project to talk about time series data, not to be confused with the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy III game called Chrono Trigger, which has been remade, of a similar name dealing with time travel. Now, this is an interesting framework. So I actually did a video on time series data not that long ago. That's a fascinating problem for AI. It kind of reminds you of recurrent networks, how you can't keep things in order and sometimes the data isn't cyclical. But here, what they've done is they just straight up went like, let's treat them just like tokens. Let's build a chat GPT like mimic with transformer architecture, but instead of saying words, why don't we just take the sequence and make that how we break the tokens down? So imagine you take the temperature every day throughout a year, 365 days, there's sort of a pattern, you have seasons, and it starts to figure that out. Because all the data ends up in this crazy multidimensional space, all related to the other in some sort of spatial dimension, and you just use that same, vector mathematics, pull out the next token, boom, you get something incredible. Yeah, according to this, it outshines traditional modern methods across various data sets. It does this even with data that it's never seen before. So sequences such as temperature, coffee consumption, or of course what the real goal here is, stock prices. This definitely seems to be doing some pretty impressive stuff. So now if you want to smash that subscribe button, my next goal is 10,000 subscribers. This channel is worth watching if you've made it this far. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've been doing it for a year. Seems like I can't figure out how to make enough money from YouTube to pay my bills, but that would be great. And I love this stuff.